Let me paint a complete picture, I said, standing up and addressing the crowd like I was delivering a TED Talk. 18 months ago, Golden Pearl Development Corporation made some spectacularly terrible investments, cryptocurrencies, offshore gambling sites, and a particularly foolish attempt to create luxury underground bunkers in Nevada. When the House of Cards collapsed, they declared bankruptcy. Everything went to county auction. The lake, the commercial buildings, the parking areas, even the decorative fountains you're all so fond of. I paused, letting them absorb this information. I attended that auction, paid $2.3 million cash for the entire package, which was honestly undervalued. But here's where it gets interesting. I kept the same management structure, the same payment systems, even the same bank account names. I wanted to observe how the HOA operated when they thought no one was watching. Consider a social experiment in power dynamics. Experiment. Victoria shrieked, finding her voice again. You've been experimenting on us like we're your personal lab rats. The comparison was so perfect, I had to smile. That's actually a brilliant analogy, Mrs. Vanderbilt. Just like my fish research helps us understand ecosystem health, my observation of the HOA helped me understand the health of this community's governance. And I have to say, the results have been eye-opening. Harold finally found his courage, probably because he realized his own neck might be on the line. Victoria, you told us you were handling all the legal correspondence. You said you had a system for monitoring property records and ownership changes. You said, "Shut up, Harold." Victoria snapped, but the damage was done. The other board members were looking at her with new eyes, seeing not their imperious leader, but someone who'd failed at the most basic administrative tasks. There should have been notices, Victoria insisted, grasping for any lifeline. Legal requirements. We should have been informed of the ownership change. I pulled out another set of documents from my seemingly bottomless folder. There were notices, lots of them. Certified letters sent to the HOA's registered address. A post office box that, according to USPS tracking, hasn't been checked since 2021. Legal notices published in the newspaper for 3 consecutive weeks, as required by law. Email notifications to the HOA's official email address, the one that auto-responds saying to contact Victoria Vanderbilt directly for all important matters. I looked at her pointedly. Did you receive those emails, Victoria? Or were they filtered out along with anything else that might have challenged your authority? The crowd was getting restless, the mood shifting from shock to anger. These people had been paying dues, following rules, submitting to Victoria's tyranny, all while she failed to handle the most basic responsibility, knowing who owned the property they operated on. Someone shouted, "What else haven't you told us?" Another voice added, "What else have you been hiding?" Victoria's carefully constructed world was crumbling faster than a sandcastle at high tide. But she had one last card to play, and it was the desperate gambit of someone with nothing left to lose. With a feral scream that would have impressed a banshee, she lunged at me, her designer nails aimed at my face, her bag swinging like a medieval flail. "You manipulative bastard. You planned this. You've been laughing at us." But as I mentioned, patience is a virtue. 18 months of fishing every morning had given me excellent reflexes. I stepped aside with the fluid grace of someone who'd been expecting exactly this reaction. Victoria's momentum carried her past me, straight toward the lake's edge. Her designer heels, those symbols of her authority, betrayed her on the wooden pier. For a moment she teetered on the edge like a cartoon character, arms windmilling frantically. Officers Rodriguez and Johnson moved with practiced efficiency, catching her arms and pulling her back before she could take an unplanned swim. "Ma'am," Rodriguez's voice had lost all its professional patience. "That's assault. You just attempted to assault someone in front of 2 police officers, and approximately, he did a quick count. 53 witnesses, all of whom are recording this incident. I'll show you assault." Victoria struggled against their grip, her carefully styled hair now resembling a bird's nest after a hurricane. "He's a fraud. A liar. Landlord." I supplied helpfully. "I'm your landlord. The person you've been paying rent to for 18 months. The owner of the property you just tried to assault me on. And most relevantly right now, the person who could file charges for assault, attempted battery, and creating a public disturbance." The fight went out of her like air from a punctured balloon. She sagged in the officer's grip, finally understanding the magnitude of her situation. Around us, phones continued recording, capturing every second of her downfall. This would be on social media within minutes, viral within hours. The mighty Victoria Vanderbilt, terror of Golden Pearl, reduced to a disheveled mess being held up by police officers. "I suggest you calm down, Mrs. Vanderbilt," Officer Rodriguez said, his tone making it clear this wasn't suggestion. "You're already facing potential charges for filing a false police report. You told Dispatch there was a terrorist attack in progress, which is a serious misuse of emergency services. Add assault to that, and you're looking at significant legal troubles." I pulled out one final document from my folder, holding it up where everyone could see. "Oh, and Victoria, you might want to review your lease agreement. Section 15, subsection C, paragraph 2. Any criminal behavior by the lessee, including but not limited to assault, battery, or filing false police reports, constitutes grounds for immediate lease termination with 30 days' notice. I smiled the same patient smile I'd worn for 18 months. Consider this your verbal warning. The written notice will be delivered within 24 hours. Unless, of course, you prefer to discuss alternative arrangements. After all, patience is a virtue, and I'm nothing if not patient. If he owns everything, what happens to the HOA? If you saw this coming, the emergency HOA meeting was called for 7 p.m. that same evening. But by 6:30, the community center was already packed beyond legal capacity. 200 residents crammed into a space designed for 150, with more clustered outside, peering through windows like kids at a candy store. The story had spread through Golden Pearl faster than a California wildfire, each retelling adding new details, until I was apparently everything from a secret billionaire to an undercover federal agent investigating HOA corruption. The truth, as always, was both simpler and more complicated than the rumors suggested. Victoria sat at the board table looking like she'd aged 10 years in 10 hours. Her designer armor was wrinkled and stained, her helmet hair had deflated into something resembling a failed souffle, and her makeup appeared to have been applied during an earthquake by someone wearing boxing gloves. The other board members had arranged themselves as far from her as physically possible while still remaining at the same table, like planets maintaining safe orbital distance from an unstable sun. I entered at exactly 7 p.m., still wearing my fishing clothes, because sometimes the best power move is showing you don't need to dress for power. My tackle box thudded on the floor as I set it down, the sound echoing in the suddenly silent room. "Evening, everyone," I said pleasantly, taking a seat in the front row. "Beautiful night for discussing your HOA's future, isn't it? I see we have quite the turnout. Nothing like a little afternoon drama to boost community engagement." Victoria tried to bang her gavel, but her hand shook so badly it sounded more like someone playing a very sad drum solo. "Order, order." Her voice cracked like a teenage boy's. "This emergency meeting of the Golden Pearl Homeowners Association is called to order. We're here to address the situation regarding property ownership and the malicious deception perpetrated by certain individuals who have infiltrated our community under false pretenses." I raised my hand with exaggerated politeness. "Point of order, Madam President. As the landlord and owner of this building, I believe I have the right to address the assembly. Also, malicious deception seems a bit dramatic. I simply didn't correct your assumptions. There's a difference between lying and letting someone's prejudices lead them to their own conclusions." The crowd murmured approval, with several people shouting variations of "let him speak" and "we want the truth." Victoria's knuckles whitened as she gripped the gavel, like it was the last life preserver on the Titanic. "You have no standing here. This is an official HOA meeting and you're not a member." I stood slowly, pulling out my laptop with the casual efficiency of someone about to deliver a killing blow. "Actually, according to your lease agreement, you know, the one you signed without reading, the property owner has full rights to attend and participate in any meetings held on their property. Section 22, subsection A. I had my lawyers make sure that it was ironclad. Without waiting for an answer, I connected my laptop to projector system. My projector system, technically, though I'd been happy to let them use it for 18 months while I gathered evidence. Since we're all here and everyone seems eager for transparency, I thought we should review some interesting findings from my 18 months of observation. Consider this an audit of your HOA's performance. The first slide appeared, and several people gasped audibly. It showed a detailed breakdown of HOA expenses, color-coded and annotated with the kind of precision that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. Let's start with my personal favorite. $5,000 monthly to VV Consulting. That's Victoria's brother, Vincent Vanderbilt, who lives in Miami Beach. Has anyone here ever met Vincent? Has anyone seen any consulting work? Any reports? Any evidence he exists beyond a bank account number? Heads shook around the room. Someone called out, "I didn't even know she had a brother." I clicked to the next slide. That's because Vincent's consulting consists of cashing checks. I called him last week pretending to be a potential client. He didn't even know what Golden Pearl was. Thought I was trying to sell him a timeshare. The crowd's murmur turned angry. Years of accumulated resentment began bubbling to the surface. Next up, I continued. Top-tier security, 300% above market rate for security services owned by Richard Vanderbilt. That's Victoria's ex-husband. In the last 18 months, we've had 4 break-ins, 6 instances of vandalism, and 0 arrests. Those are legitimate business expenses. Victoria protested weakly. We needed specialized security. Specialized in what? Taking your money? I clicked to the next slide, and this one caused an actual uproar. The HOA Emergency Fund. Based on your monthly dues, this fund should contain approximately $300,000. Current balance as of this morning, $23,417. The room erupted. People jumped to their feet, shouting questions, demanding answers. Someone yelled, "That's our money!" Another voice added, "I've been paying dues for 12 years. I raised my hand for quiet, and surprisingly, the room settled. Oh, I have documentation for where it went. The next slide showed credit card statements, each charge highlighted and annotated. $3,000 at Neiman Marcus listed as office supplies, $2,000 at Burke Williams Spa called a board retreat, $8,000 for lake maintenance equipment. That went to Victoria's home address. Each revelation was another nail in Victoria's coffin. The crowd grew angrier with every slide, years of petty tyrannies suddenly making sense. As the owner of this building and your landlord, I said, I have a decision to make about the HOA's future. But first, I believe the community should have its say. All in favor of removing Victoria Vanderbilt as HOA president. 199 hands shot up immediately. All opposed. Victoria raised her trembling hand alone. Even Harold and Janet had voted against her. The motion carries, I announced. Victoria Vanderbilt, you are hereby removed as HOA president, effective immediately. Victoria slumped in her chair, but I wasn't finished. Now, regarding the missing funds, Mrs. Vanderbilt, we need to discuss restitution. $276,000 is a significant amount. While I could pursue criminal charges for embezzlement, I prefer to offer alternatives. She looked up with desperate hope. Alternatives? I reached into my tackle box and pulled out what I'd been saving for this moment. A bright orange clownfish costume, complete with fins, scales, googly eyes, and a name tag reading, "Hi, I'm the Karen who called 911 on science." The room exploded in laughter and applause. Option 1, I explained. You leave Golden Pearl tonight. Never return. I won't pursue criminal charges or try to recover the stolen money. You just disappear. Victoria's jaw dropped. Leave? This has been my home for 15 years. Option 2, I continued, holding up the costume. You work off your debt. This building will become a community center focused on education and conservation. I need a janitor. Minimum wage, $10 per hour. At that rate, paying back $276,000 will take approximately 13 years, assuming you work full-time. 13 years. Victoria shrieked. That's slavery. That's mathematics. I corrected. The uniform requirement, this costume, every day. And you'll need to greet visitors with a phrase on your name tag. Victoria looked around desperately for support, but found only phone cameras and satisfied expressions. You have 60 seconds to decide. I announced, checking my watch. Leave forever or work in a fish costume. 59:58. The crowd joined in, chanting the countdown. 30:29:28. Victoria's eyes darted between the door and the costume. 10:98. The job, she screamed. I'll take the janitor job. Excellent choice. You start Monday, 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. I hear the new management is very strict about punctuality. Oh, and Victoria, patience is a virtue. Fish always come to those who wait, but sometimes they have to swim upstream first. The meeting adjourned in chaos, but the good kind, neighbors talking excitedly, making plans for the new community center, and taking countless photos of Victoria holding her new uniform. Will she actually show up in a fish costume? Comment justice if she deserves this. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of karma, catching up to a lifetime of bad decisions. I positioned myself outside the newly christened Golden Pearl Community Center at 5:45 a.m., coffee in hand, wondering if Victoria would actually show up or if she'd chosen to flee in the night like a villain in a bad movie. The morning mist rose off the lake behind me, and I couldn't help but appreciate the poetic justice of it all. The woman who tried to ban me from fishing now had to report to me dressed as a fish. At 6:15, a Mercedes pulled into the employee parking area, moving slowly like its driver was approaching her own execution. I'd already installed new signs marking, "Employee parking only. Violators will be required to wear extra fins." Because sometimes you have to commit to the bit. Victoria sat in her car for a full 5 minutes, probably contemplating her life choices or plotting escape. Finally, she emerged, grabbed a garment bag from her trunk, and scurried to the employee entrance like a hermit crab seeking a new shell. 10 minutes later, the door opened and out walked 6 feet of orange clownfish. The costume shimmered in the morning light. Scales gleamed, fins flopped, and googly eyes bounced with each step. The name tag read in giant font, "Hi, I'm the Karen who called 911 on science." I took a long sip of coffee, savoring the moment I'd waited 18 months to see. "Good morning, Victoria." Or should I say, Karen Fish? The costume muffled her reply, but the attitude came through clearly enough. "Now then, let's review your first day duties. From 6:30 to 8, you'll stand at the main entrance and greet every visitor with, 'Welcome to Golden Pearl Community Center. I'm the Karen who called the cops on science.' Practice it for me." Silence. "Victoria." The costume muffles, not silences. Again. "Welcome to Golden Pearl Community Center," came her flat voice. "I'm the Karen who called the cops on science." Better, but let's aim for slightly less reading your own obituary and slightly more cheerful redemption mascot. By 7 a.m., the early risers began arriving for our new lakefront programs: yoga, senior water aerobics, and fish facts and coffee. The reactions were everything I'd hoped for and more. Some residents gasped, some laughed so hard they had to lean on the wall. "Is that? Oh Lord, it's Victoria." "No way. Take a picture." "No, a video." One retiree live-streamed the whole encounter while sipping green tea, narrating like a nature documentary. "Here we observe the rare Karen fish in its natural habitat, pretending to care about others." She was surrounded by people taking selfies, each one demanding she repeat her humiliating line, "Welcome to Golden Pearl. I'm the Karen who," click, click, flash. She looked like a broken animatronic at a fish-themed Chuck E. Cheese. Someone handed her a foam fin and asked for an autograph. She gave it to them. I nearly applauded. At 8 o'clock sharp, the real punishment began. A yellow school bus arrived, unloading 25 kindergartners for our Intro to Aquatic Science program. And if adults are mildly cruel, 5-year-olds are concentrated vengeance in sneakers. "Miss Fish, did you get turned into a fish for being bad? Did you bite someone? My mommy says calling the cops is only for real crimes. Were you stealing fish?" Victoria read from the laminated card on her lanyard. "I was mean to fish and the people who study them. I'm learning to be better." One boy whispered loudly, "She's lying. That fish is suspicious." Another offered her his juice pouch out of pity, only to immediately take it back. "Actually, no. You'll spill it. You have fins." By the time the teacher herded them inside, Victoria looked like she'd aged 10 years. Her costume was smeared with jam, glitter, and whatever kindergartners secrete. By mid-morning, it was beautiful. After lunch, which she had to sip through a long plastic straw because the headpiece didn't come off, she faced her biggest task yet: cleaning the 20-foot photograph of me that now hung in the main hall. It showed me in full gear, gently tagging a largemouth bass with scientific equipment, under the caption "Marcus Thompson, protecting science and fish since 2023. Patience is a virtue." I handed her a toothbrush and pointed at a stepladder. "Make sure every scale shines. We want guests to feel the respect for fish biology." She muttered something beneath her foam lips and started scrubbing. Every few minutes I reminded her, "Don't forget the plaque. Imported rosewood. Costs more than your HOA salary." Several residents gathered just to watch. Some pulled up chairs. Look at her cleaning the man she tried to ruin. One whispered, "This is better than television." By Friday, Victoria was famous. A TikTok user posted a video titled, "Karen Turned Fish for Crimes Against Science," that hit 2 million views overnight. Another edited her into Finding Nemo with the caption, "Found her." Someone even made a remix of her costume voice saying, "I'm the Karen who called the cops on science," to a techno beat. We played it at the center. News vans showed up. Reporters asked for interviews. Victoria had to give daily tours, still in costume, where she confessed everything on record. "Yes, I abused HOA authority. Yes, I stole funds. Yes, I called 911 on someone tagging base. Now I teach lake science as a fish." She said it so many times it started to sound believable. Some visitors thought it was performance art. The costume collection grew. Monday, clownfish. Tuesday, inflatable blowfish. Wednesday, glowing anglerfish. Thursday, a pink sequin shark that played the Jaws theme with each step. But Friday's lobster suit was her personal nightmare. Foam claws too wide for the mop handle, antennae that slapped people accidentally, and a tail that got stuck in every door frame. 1 year later, I sat by the lake at sunset, fishing rod in hand, watching her through the windows. She was in lobster form again, pushing a cleaning cart with steady rhythm. She paused for a moment and looked up. We made eye contact. I lifted my rod in salute. She gave a small nod, then turned back to work. Not forgiveness, not apology, just peace. A strange mutual understanding that justice had been served, and maybe something deeper had begun. A little boy ran up, out of breath. "Mr. Thompson, the fish lady taught us about pH levels. She said high acidity is bad for trout." "She did." I looked at him. "Yep. She even knows Latin fish names now." She said, "Micropterus samoids. That's bass, right?" I blinked. "That's correct." I looked back toward the window. Victoria was pointing at a laminated chart, antennae bobbing gently, explaining some cycle to another kid. Maybe this was redemption. Maybe the fish costume era was the strangest, funniest, and most unexpectedly educational legacy this town ever had. "That's good," I said. "Everyone can learn. Sometimes it just takes the right amount of embarrassment and fiberglass." I stood up. "Now, let me show you how to tie a better knot. The fish are biting today, and patience always pays off." Where is Victoria now? Still a fish. Share this video to save a fish from a Karen. Guns in my face for tagging fish. The HOA president called 911 screaming, terrorists with weapons attacking our lake, while live streaming my arrest to 200 residents. She thought she'd finally won. But when police checked one document in my tackle box, this Karen went from gloating to begging in 3 seconds flat. By sunset, she'd lost everything. Her power, her dignity, her entire life. Now she spends every day dressed as something so humiliating I can't even say it here. This is an absolutely insane true story. The morning everything changed started like any other at Golden Pearl Lake. 6 a.m., mist rising off the water, and me with my research equipment ready to tag base for California Wildlife Conservation Program. I've been living in Golden Pearl Estates for 18 months, carefully maintaining my cover as Marcus Thompson, the down-on-his-luck fisherman who somehow scraped together enough money to rent the worst house in their precious gated community. My 1995 Ford pickup coughed and wheezed in the driveway, rust eating through its blue paint like age spots on elderly skin. The flannel shirt I wore had genuine holes, not the $200 designer kind, and my jeans remembered the Clinton administration. To anyone watching, I was just another working-class guy who didn't belong in their manicured paradise. Nobody needed to know about the $50 million sitting in various investment accounts, the result of selling my artificial intelligence company to a tech giant whose name you definitely recognize. The betrayal by my business partner had taught me valuable lessons about appearances and assumptions. David had smiled in my face while stealing proprietary code, then painted me as a villain in every tech blog from here to Silicon Valley. Money makes people crazy, I'd told my lawyer during the settlement, watching David's mask finally slip as the judge ruled in my favor. I need to disappear for a while. Find something real to do. That something real turned out to be fish conservation, and Golden Pearl Lake became my laboratory. As I prepared my equipment that morning, checking the tiny RFID trackers that would help map migration patterns, I noticed something unusual in my tackle box. The old brass key I'd been carrying for months seemed to gleam in the dawn light. Its worn surface showed the faded logo of Golden Pearl HOA. I'd found it in the papers when I bought. Well, that's getting ahead of the story. Patience, as I always say. Fish always come to those who wait. Specimen 47, I murmured into my voice recorder, gently holding a healthy 3-pound base. Excellent coloration, no signs of disease or parasites. Installing tracker now. The process took less than 30 seconds. A quick scan to check for existing tags, then the gentle placement of a rice grain-sized tracker to the fish's back fin. The technology was amazing, biodegradable after 6 months, completely harmless to the fish, and invaluable for understanding how city development affected water ecosystems. This data would go to 3 environmental organizations, contributing to real science that might actually save these lakes from the endless developments spreading across Southern California like concrete cancer. I was so focused on my work that I almost missed the sound of designer heels clicking across the wooden pier like an angry typewriter. What are you doing to my fish? The voice could have broken wine glasses at 50 yards. Victoria Vanderbilt, HOA president and self-appointed queen of Golden Pearl, stood at the end of the pier in full battle gear. Her platinum blonde hair was styled into what I privately named the helmet, a structure so stiff it probably required building permits. The Chanel suit cost more than most people's cars. The Louis Vuitton bag swung like a medieval weapon, and her face was twisted into such intense anger that I briefly wondered if she might burst into flames. 2 HOA board members flanked her. Harold Peton, a nervous accountant who always looked like he was planning his escape routes, and Janet Morrison, whose main job on the board seemed to be nodding at everything Victoria said. "Good morning, Mrs. Vanderbilt," I replied calmly, not looking up from my work. I'd learned through careful observation that direct eye contact with Victoria was like challenging a mad dog. It only made things worse. Beautiful morning for some scientific research, isn't it? Her designer heels clicked closer, each step a declaration of war. "Don't you dare good morning me, you fish torturer. You're marking them like cattle, like property. It's barbaric." I finally looked up, keeping my expression as neutral as a Swiss banker. "Actually, ma'am, I'm conducting population research for the state wildlife conservation program. These trackers are smaller than a grain of rice, completely harmless and biodegradable. They help us understand migration patterns, breeding behaviors, and ecosystem health. Would you like to see my permits?" Permits. Victoria's face turned a shade of purple I'd previously thought was reserved for eggplants. "This isn't about permits. This is Golden Pearl. I am the law here. You need my permission to breathe on this property, let alone molest innocent fish." She whipped out her phone with the speed of a gunslinger, her manicured fingers flying across the screen. Behind her, Harold shifted uncomfortably, and I caught him mouthing what looked like, "Here we go again." Janet just nodded, her head bobbing like one of those dashboard dogs. "You know what?" Victoria continued, her voice rising to frequencies that probably disturbed sonar. "I'm done being nice. I'm done with you people thinking you can just waltz in here and do whatever you want." The way she said "you people" left no doubt about what she meant. I'd heard that tone before, usually right before someone mentioned property values or neighborhood character. She pressed the phone to her ear with dramatic flair. "Hello, 911? Yes, this is Victoria Vanderbilt, HOA president at Golden Pearl Estates. I need officers here immediately." I raised an eyebrow but continued working, gently releasing specimen 47 back into the water. "There's a terrorist at our lake." "Yes, a terrorist. He's attacking innocent fish with metal devices. He has a whole box of them. It could be bombs for all I know." Harold's eyes widened in alarm. Even Janet stopped nodding. "Ma'am," I said mildly, "I don't think. He's threatening me now." Victoria shrieked into the phone. "He's being aggressive. I think he might be armed. Please hurry." I fear for my life. There are children in this neighborhood." She ended the call with a satisfied smirk, the kind of expression a cat might wear after cornering a mouse. "Not so smart now, are you?" she taunted, her voice dripping with enough venom to fill a pharmacy. The police take terrorism very seriously these days, especially when it involves suspicious devices and threatening behavior toward upstanding citizens like myself. Instead of panicking like she clearly expected, I pulled out my own phone and sent a quick text. Code red. Release the Kraken. Then I settled back onto my cooler and cast my line into the water again. The brass key in my pocket seemed to pulse with warmth, as if it knew its moment was coming. "Aren't you going to run?" Victoria demanded, clearly frustrated by my lack of terror. "Pack up your torture devices? Maybe try to hide the evidence." I checked my bait, noting that the worm seemed particularly lively this morning. "Where would I run, Mrs. Vanderbilt? I'm not doing anything illegal. In fact, I'm contributing to environmental conservation. The real question is whether filing a false police report is a misdemeanor or a felony in California. I can never remember." Her face went through several interesting color changes before settling on a shade I'd call apoplectic burgundy. "Is that a threat? Did everyone hear that? He just threatened me with legal action. That's witness intimidation." Harold and Janet dutifully nodded, though Harold's nod looked more like a nervous twitch. "No threat, ma'am," I said, my voice as calm as the lake surface. "Just a friendly observation about the potential consequences of calling 911 and claiming there's a terrorist attack in progress when someone is legally conducting scientific research. But hey, I'm sure the officers will sort it all out when they arrive." The siren started as a distant wail, growing louder with each passing second. Victoria's grin widened, making her look like a barracuda who just spotted a school of minnows. "Hear that? That's the sound of justice. That's the sound of you learning that Golden Pearl isn't for people like you. You should have stayed in whatever trailer park you crawled out of." I reeled in my line slowly, checking the hook. Empty, but that was okay. The real catch of the day was swimming right into my net. "You know, Mrs. Vanderbilt," I said conversationally, "I've always believed in patience. My grandfather used to tell me that fish always come to those who wait." Of course, he was talking about actual fish, not the metaphorical kind that swim right into your boat and beg to be caught. She blinked, clearly not following the metaphor. "What are you babbling about? Are you on drugs?" "Officers, checking for drugs," she called out to the approaching sirens. As the police cars turned into the Golden Pearl entrance, I couldn't help but smile. Everything was proceeding exactly as I'd planned 18 months ago, when I first decided to buy this entire place. The key in my pocket felt heavier now, weighted with significance. Victoria Vanderbilt was about to learn what happened when you judged a book by its cover, especially when that book owned the entire library. Why isn't he running from the cops? Drop your theory and comments now. What's his secret? The two police cruisers that pulled into the Golden Pearl Lake parking area moved with the unhurried precision of officers who responded to one too many HOA complaints. No dramatic sliding stops, no officers jumping out with weapons drawn. Just a weary professionalism of cops who knew the difference between actual emergencies and what I like to call privileged panic. Officer Rodriguez stepped out first, 20 years of experience visible in the way he automatically scanned the scene, categorized the threat level as suburban drama, and adjusted his approach accordingly. His partner, Officer Johnson, looked younger but equally unimpressed by the theatrical emergency that had been reported. They both had that particular expression I'd seen on service workers everywhere. The "I don't get paid enough for this" look that came from dealing with Golden Pearl's special brand of entitlement. "Officers, thank God you're here." Victoria rushed toward them in her designer heels, somehow managing to run, wave her phone, and point at me simultaneously. It was almost impressive, like watching a circus performer juggle while riding a unicycle. The terrorist is right there. He's been torturing innocent fish and threatening residents. I have video evidence of everything. She thrust her phone at Officer Rodriguez, who took a subtle step back to avoid getting smacked in the face. Behind her, Harold and Janet trailed like reluctant backup dancers who'd forgotten the choreography. Officer Rodriguez held up a calming hand, the gesture of someone who'd talked down countless Karens from their imaginary ledges. "Ma'am, please take a breath and explain the situation calmly. We receive a report of a terrorist threat involving explosive devices." His tone suggested he already knew the answer, but was following protocol. Victoria launched into her tirade with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been rehearsing their victim's statement in the shower for years. "This vagrant has been attacking our fish, putting devices on them. Metal devices. Who knows what they really are? They could be trackers for fish trafficking or bombs. Tiny fish bombs. And when I, as HOA president, tried to protect our community property, he threatened me." Officer Johnson pulled out his notepad, though I suspected it was more to hide his expression than to take notes. "Sir," he addressed me, "can you explain what you're doing here?" I stood up slowly, making sure to keep my hands visible and my movements non-threatening. 20 years in tech had taught me that presentation was everything. "Certainly, officers. I'm conducting fish population research for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm tagging fish with harmless RFID trackers to monitor migration patterns and ecosystem health. Here's my state permit." I handed over the laminated permit, which Officer Johnson examined with professional interest. "These are the tracking devices." I continued, showing them the tiny tags. Smaller than a grain of rice, completely biodegradable, designed to fall off naturally after 6 months. I've been doing this research for over a year, contributing data to 3 different conservation organizations. Victoria's face contorted like she'd bitten into a lemon wrapped in disappointment. "That doesn't matter," she shrieked, causing a nearby flock of ducks to take flight. "This is private property. He needs HOA permission for everything. She frantically pulled out a piece of paper, still warm from her home printer. The header read Golden Pearl HOA Emergency Addendum in what looked like 72-point font. "Look, Section 47B, which has been in effect for months. No research activities without written HOA board approval. He's in violation. That makes this criminal trespassing." Harold, apparently forgetting his role as silent supporter, whispered, "Actually, Victoria, you just printed that this morning." Victoria's elbow found his ribs with precision of a guided missile. "Shut up, Harold. The point is, he's violating HOA regulations on HOA property. That's criminal." Officer Rodriguez examined the freshly printed paper with the expression of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out dozens of times. "Ma'am, HOA regulations are civil matters, not criminal ones. We can't arrest someone for violating community guidelines if he has a valid state permit and isn't actually harming the fish or threatening anyone." "But he did threaten me," Victoria insisted. "He said something about false police reports. That's clearly intimidation. He's trying to silence me from protecting our community." I decided it was time to play my first card. Reaching into my tackle box, I pulled out the manila folder I'd been carrying every day for the past 6 months, waiting for exactly this moment. It was thick enough to stop a bullet, filled with documents that were about to change Victoria Vanderbilt's entire world. "Officers," I said, my voice carrying the calm authority I perfected during countless board meetings, "before this escalates any further, there's something you should see. This documentation might clarify the situation significantly." I handed the folder to Officer Rodriguez, noting how his eyebrows rose as he felt its weight. Page 1 should be sufficient to start, though the supporting documentation continues for about 200 pages. Victoria's sneer could have curdled milk. "What's that supposed to be? More fishing permits? A permission slip from your mommy? You can have authorization from the president himself. You still need my approval to exist on this property." Officer Rodriguez opened the folder and began reading. I watched his expression change from professional boredom to surprise to something approaching awe. He showed the first page to Officer Johnson, whose reaction was identical. The slow dawning recognition of someone realizing they just stepped into something way above their pay grade. "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez said slowly, his voice taking on a formal tone, "you need to see this right now." Victoria snatched the folder with her usual grace, which is to say none at all. What ridiculous excuse is this? Some kind of sovereign citizen nonsense? I don't care if you think you're exempt from. Her voice died like a radio being thrown into water. The color drained from her face. So fast, I worried she might faint. Her hands began shaking, making the papers rattle like autumn leaves. This is... She stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Real, I suggested helpfully. Yes, very real. Notarized, filed with the county, verified by 3 different legal firms. I even had it authenticated by the state yesterday, just to be thorough. Victoria's mouth opened and closed several times, reminding me of the fish I just tagged. Behind her, Harold leaned in to read over her shoulder, his accountant's brain processing the numbers faster than Victoria's denial could kick in. Oh my God, he breathed. He owns. Victoria, he owns everything. The lake, the HOA building, the parking lots, even the guest facilities. It's all right here. March 15, 2023, $2.3 million. County auction for defaulted property. Janet, for the first time since I'd known her, stopped nodding and started thinking. But that would mean we've been paying rent too. She pulled out her phone, frantically checking the HOA's banking records. GP Management LLC. For $1,500 a month for the headquarters building, 18 payments. The crowd that had been gathering during the police response pressed closer, phones out, recording every second. This was better than anything on Netflix. What's happening? Someone called out. What's in those papers? Officer Johnson, professional to the core, raised his voice. Folks, please stay back. We're trying to determine the facts here. But the facts were already spreading to the crowd like wildfire. He owns a lake. The HOA building, too. Have we been paying rent to him? I pulled out my phone, navigating to my banking app with practiced ease. Since there seems to be some confusion, let me clarify. GP Management, LLC, that's Golden Pearl Management, was a company set up by the original developers. When they went bankrupt 18 months ago, everything went to county auction. I purchased it all through my company, MT Holdings. But here's the interesting part. I kept the same management company name for the bank transfers. Wanted to see how long it would take the HOA to notice their landlord had changed. I showed my phone screen to the officers. 18 months of payments for $1,500 each. Total of $81,000. Every payment on time, which I appreciate. Victoria, you've been an excellent tenant, at least from a financial perspective. Victoria's legs seemed to give out, and she sank onto a nearby bench. The designer outfit that had been her armor now looked like a costume that didn't quite fit. But how? There should have been notices. Legal requirements. We should have been informed. I sat back down on my cooler, adopting the patient tone I use when explaining complex code to junior developers. Oh, there were notices. Sent to the HOA's register address, a post office box that, according to USPS records, hasn't been checked in 2 years. Legal notices were published in the Riverside County Gazette Legal section for 3 consecutive weeks, as required by law. But I suppose you were too busy measuring grass height to read the newspaper. Harold's face had gone pale. Victoria, you said you were handling all the legal correspondence. You said you had everything under control. She rounded on him with surprising energy for someone who just had their world shattered. This is obviously fraud. He tricked us. He's been pretending to be poor. Look at him. Look at that truck. It's all an elaborate con. I stood up again, stretching like a cat who just cornered a particularly juicy mouse. I never claimed to be poor, Mrs. Vanderbilt. You saw my appearance and made assumptions. You saw my old truck and decided I didn't belong. You saw me fishing and labeled me a vagrant. Every single judgment was yours. I just didn't correct them. After all, patience is a virtue. Fish always come to those who wait, and you've been swimming toward my hook for 18 months. The crowd was buzzing now, the story spreading in real time across social media. I could practically see the headlines writing themselves. HOA Karen calls cops on her own landlord, or fish tagger owns entire lake HOA tried to ban him from. Victoria's hand shook as she flipped through more pages, each revelation worse than the last. Page 47 is particularly interesting. I noted, that's your lease agreement. the one you signed 18 months ago. Section 15 explicitly states that making false reports to law enforcement is grounds for immediate lease termination. Something to consider. What papers could stop cops mid-arrest? Comment what you think is in that folder. Officer Rodriguez cleared his throat, recognizing that the situation was about to explode like a shaken champagne bottle at a wedding. The crowd had grown to nearly 50 people, all with phones out, all sensing they were witnessing something that would become Golden Pearl legend. For the sake of clarity, and to ensure everyone understands the situation, he announced in his best official voice, "I'm going to read the key points from these documents aloud." He adjusted his stance, holding the papers where people could see them, though not close enough for anyone to grab. The morning sun caught the official seals and notary stamps, making them gleam like medals of honor. Deed of sale, County of Riverside, State of California. Property description, Golden Pearl Lake, approximately 15 acres of water and surrounding land, including all commercial buildings, specifically the structure at 1500 Pearl Drive, currently leased to Golden Pearl Homeowners Association. He paused, letting the words sink in like rain on parched earth. Around us, the whispers grew louder, a chorus of disbelief and dawning recognition. Purchaser, Marcus Thompson, through MT Holdings, LLC, a California limited liability company. Purchase date, March 15, 2023. Purchase price, $2,300,000. Previous owner, Golden Pearl Development Corporation, through bankruptcy court proceedings, case number. He rattled off numbers that meant nothing to most people, but everything to anyone who understood property law. All documents properly notarized, filed with the county recorder, and verified as legitimate. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear fish jumping in the lake behind me. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower started up, the normal sound of suburban life, continuing while Victoria Vanderbilt's world crumbled like a stale cookie. Then the dam burst. Fake! Victoria shot up from the bench like she'd been electrocuted, her designer bag swinging dangerously. These are obviously forged. This is an elaborate fraud. Check them again. Call the FBI. Call the governor. Call someone who can expose the charlatan. Her voice cracked on the last word. "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez said with the patience of a kindergarten teacher, "I've just verified everything with the county clerk's office. They confirm Mr. Thompson owns these properties. Every document is legitimate, every signature authenticated, every seal verified. This is all completely legal and above board." Victoria's face went through what I started thinking of as the 5 stages of Karen: denial, anger, bargaining, more anger, and finally explosive rage. "This is entrapment," she spun in circles, addressing the crowd like a prosecutor, making a closing argument. "Don't you see what he's done? He's been pretending to be poor. He's been lying to all of us. Look at him. Torn clothes, rusty truck, fishing every morning like some kind of vagrant. It's all an act. He's been laughing at us this entire time." I decided it was time to add some context, keeping my voice conversational like I was discussing the weather. "I never lied about anything, Mrs. Vanderbilt. I simply didn't advertise my financial situation. You saw my appearance and made assumptions. You saw my truck and decided I was beneath you. You saw me fishing and labeled me a problem. Every single judgment came from your own prejudices. I just let you believe what you wanted to believe. After all, patience is a virtue. Fish always come to those who wait." She whirled on me, finger pointed like a weapon. "You knew we didn't know. You deliberately kept it secret. That's fraud. That's something. Officer, arrest him for something." But her rage was giving way to bargaining, the desperate scrambling of someone watching their power evaporate. Even if this is real, which it's not, but even if it is, we have rights. Tenant rights. You can't just throw us out. We have a lease. We've been here for years. This is our community center. I pulled out my phone, navigating to the banking app with the casual efficiency of someone who checked it regularly. "Oh, I'm not evicting anyone. You're absolutely right. You have a lease you've been honoring perfectly. By the way, let me show you something interesting." I turned the screen toward the crowd, making sure the cameras could capture it. GP Management LLC. That's who you've been sending your monthly rent to, correct? For $1,500 on the first of every month. Automatic transfer from the HOA account. Victoria nodded reluctantly, probably wondering where this was going. Harold, his accountant instincts kicking in, was already pulling up the HOA banking records on his tablet. GP Management LLC, I continued, savoring each word like fine wine, stood for Golden Pearl Management. It was a company set up by the original developers to manage the commercial properties. When they went bankrupt 18 months ago, the company was dissolved, but the bank account, that transferred with the property sale. To me, I let that sink in for a moment, watching comprehension dawn on faces like sunrise over the lake. You've been paying me rent for 18 months, $81,000 in total, all properly documented, all legally transferred. Thank you for your promptness. By the way, not a single late payment. You've been an exemplary tenant, at least financially. Victoria's phone slipped from her numb fingers, clattering on the pavement. Around us, HOA board members and residents were frantically checking their own phones, verify what I just told them. The murmurs grew to excited chatter. 18 months. We've been paying him. How did nobody notice? Who checks these things? That last question came from Janet, who was staring at Victoria with something approaching betrayal. Don't forget to like and subscribe to AS Stories for more incredible tales like this one.